You might have noticed that there's been some pop-up bike infrastructure installed across the city, and hopefully you'll have read the independent risk assessment that was commissioned by residents and undertaken by the traffic group. This study concluded that what had been installed is unnecessary and will inevitably lead to risks for cyclists, which is the opposite of what was intended. If you are elected, will you support the removal of all of the pop-up bike infrastructure from the streets of Port Phillip?
Georgie, I think it's your turn to go first.
In an earlier conversation, I think somebody said you need to be accountable, have consultation and deliver. And I think these bike paths, other than the fact that a lot of them are inappropriate and overly engineered, there was a lack of accountability, and there still is a lack of accountability on this. The consultation didn't happen, and the delivery is really fallen short. This is a really distressing topic, not just because a lot of the infrastructure is inappropriate. It's also the distress that it's causing in our community. We woke up one morning and all of a sudden the red lines were there and the blocks were there. It's tarnishing what people think of bike paths, and that's really sad. This electorate has so many bikes. We want to encourage everyone to be on their bikes, and the way this bike path happened was not accountable. It did not include for consultation. It has caused so much heartache and people turning against each other. It's been really, really distressful. If I was in Parliament, I would be saying that we need to actually put a pause to everything that's going on and have a review that involves real consultation with the people that want to use their bikes and want their children to be safe on bikes, but also want everyone to be safe and don't believe that's what they're getting right now. So I would ask for a review and a pause.
The pop-up bike lanes must go. They are dangerous, they are destructive, and they appeared in a very deceitful manner. I have received more emails on this topic than any other topic. It is phenomenal the reach that this has had with hundreds and hundreds of people around the electorate. Everyone I speak to is for bikes and for having environmentally friendly transportation. But they're turning into scooter lanes rather than bike lanes, which adds a whole nother element of danger and safety to it. And I agree wholeheartedly with Georgie about the lack of consultation. I live on a street where it goes in front of me, and I was woken up at 3 a.m. to this grinding sound, and then in the morning, concrete bollards and bright yellow and bright green paint and glass in the paint, and it's been an absolute disaster, and the community was not consulted, and even with the request to have them removed, that still has not been forthcoming.
I'd also like to reiterate that having read the traffics report, I was pretty shocked to see some of the photos of the areas that was studied. I can't even from the photograph and as a cyclist figure out how I would approach those areas and how I would be able to use that bike infrastructure. Also see that places like Marine Parade that already have bike infrastructure in situ have been chosen for that trial. So I think I have to agree with the other candidates that this was a poorly implemented trial. I also want to fairly acknowledge that there was some restrictions on how that could be implemented, like a restriction that no parking spaces were to be taken away. If that was the restriction, then the trial shouldn't have gone ahead. It's impossible to put safe bike infrastructure in to implement that trial without actually putting it in the way that you intend it to be in a final product. And also that these are not tested or used infrastructure for bikes elsewhere. So we know plenty of cities around the world that have great bike infrastructure, but they're not Melbourne. And we need actual infrastructure for bikes that's put in consideration with how we use our cities, how we commute, the distances that we commute, and in which manner we, do that in times of day. So I think, yes, the bike lanes, especially the ones that I've seen in the traffics report, need to be removed. I know that there are some that have already been earmarked for changes based on feedback from the trial and the data that's been gathered. And I won't specifically commit to removing all of them as the questions asked, because I'm not sure that all of them are covered in that traffics report. I think a report of a similar nature should be funded by the government to look into the infrastructure that they've put in for the trial. That shouldn't be something that needs to be funded by the community. And the community needs a proper consultation process which involves forums and an opportunity for feedback rather than just saying, here's something in your letterbox, bike lanes are going in.
Okay, this one's a little bit long.
I think we've missed Nina.
Oh, sorry, Nina.
Quite okay.
Go for it.
Yes, okay. So I do, I should say first up, I do support safe and accessible active transport, and you will note that there is bike infrastructure on St Kilda Road currently underway. It's a $30 million investment and has proper separation between bikes and cars, and certainly seems to have been well received thus far, and it's well underway, but needs to be completed. So yes, there has been the collaboration between the City of Port Phillip and Department of Transport with the rollout of the trial, the pop-up bike trial on council roads. Now, I think it's fair enough to say that it hasn't met community expectations, and there were some pretty strident responses. And I think it's certainly really important in that space to acknowledge that, and I'm happy to. And I think the community has been listened to in terms of some of the most, the particular pop-up bike paths that were causing some of the greatest concern for a whole variety of reasons, and I wish to validate those reasons, so I won't elucidate them here, have already been pulled back. And it also lends itself to the fact that it was, or it has been, a trial. And I think really the community voice will direct the rest of this, subject to the fact that obviously council has discretion over the removal of the bike lanes because they are on council roads, that if the community sees fit, upon review for them to be amended, then I will advocate for that. If the community alternatively sees fit for certain elements or whatever elements of the bike lanes or the bike lanes per se to be removed, then I'm happy to advocate for that too. There you go.